हैं speaker of the session, Mr. Alok Patnia. Many of us here knows Alok Bhaiya very well, but many of our seniors might not be knowing him. So let me introduce Mr. Alok Bhaiya to all of you. Alok Patnia is the managing partner of Taxmara Global, a global tax and firm provide advisory, tax, and regulatory services in India, US, and Singapore. A St. Xavier's alumnus, a chartered accountant, ex-KPMG, and EY, has 20 plus years of experience in global tax and structuring, investment banking, mergers and acquisitions, and growth strategies. With a dream to build a global firm from India, friends, Alok Bhaiya quit his job and started Tax Mantra Global in a garage office. Since 2010, Tax Mantra Global has served more than 40,000 plus clients globally with offices in Mumbai, Bangalore, Kolkata, Delhi, Singapore, Los Angeles, and New York. In 2017, Alok Bhaiya was also awarded with the CMA Management Excellence Award and was also featured in 80 Now as the leader of tomorrow. Alok Bhaiya is partner with the Singapore government for establishment of the India-Singapore Business Bridge. He serves on the board of TIE and AnitaB.org and similar associations for entrepreneurship upliftment. As they say, miles to go before I sleep. Alok Bhaiya, a torchbearer on the Indian startup ecosystem, is working on his dream to take Tax Mantra to IPO, directly invest into 100 plus startups, creating wealth for his employees and stakeholders in years to follow. So now I would like Alok Bhaiya to take it further and help us in understanding and decoding Indian startup ecosystem. Over to you, Alok Bhaiya. Thank you.
Thanks, Ritesh. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks, Pradeep Bhaiya. And I really like this initiative wherein we are retouching upon with all our brothers from Podar. I must say at this point of time that even though it's been close to, I think, 16 years since I've left Podar, but those 4 or 5 years which I've spent in Podar are still the best days of my life. And some of the days I still remember. And thanks for inviting me and thanks for giving me this opportunity. Let me share my screen so that I can start the presentation. Just a second. I will just minimize this. Yeah. I hope you all are able to see my screen. So today, the idea behind this webinar or the meeting was to understand what's happening in the Indian startup ecosystem. And the best way to understand the ecosystem is to also understand the history of Indian startup ecosystem. और हमारे लिए बहुत जरूरी है कि ऐसा क्या हुआ पिछले 10-15 सालों में कि स्टार्टअप्स जो है वो मेन फ्रेम बन चुका है in the Indian startup ecosystem. In fact, it has the word startup has been picked up by government for the first time in 2016 when the Stand Up India initiative was launched on 16th of January by our Prime Minister, where I was also invited there in Delhi in Vigyan Bhavan. Prior to that, no government even knew that what is startup, and now you see in the budgets also and everywhere the startup word is very much there. So it has become a mainstream word, and it has become a mainstream for not only government but all the sectors of this country. So what has happened, and let us go back. और एक चीज समझना बहुत जरूरी है कि लोग बोलते हैं कि स्टार्टअप क्या है. I mean, what is the difference between startup and normal businesses? So मेरी नजर में what I feel, startup equals to disruption. So कोई ऐसा बिजनेस जो किसी चीज में डिस्ट्रप्शन ला सकता हो वो स्टार्टअप है. डिस्ट्रप्शन क्या चीज का? द डिस्ट्रप्शन इज व्हेन यू चेंज द बिहेवियर फॉर लॉन्ग टर्म. You see Uber, you see Oyo, you see Make My Trip, you see many such startups which have changed the behavior. Latest is Geo, Big Basket. In the pandemic, for the 7 months, Swiggy can be one of the examples. Google is also one of the examples. So all the startup is something which they build as a disruption, और disruption ऐसा जो कि permanently they change the behavior of the customer. That's the startup for me. And that's the difference between startup and businesses. Businesses might not change the behavior. So there can be steel plants, there can be groceries, there can be boutique, there can be malls, there can be CA firms, tax firms, law firms. But startups scale पे जब आप disruption करते हो, Uber एक दिन में 30,000 cars in Kolkata they're running, and when you disrupt anything, so more than 1 billion such ideas are there, but startups वही होता है जो disrupt कर पाए. So ये definition है मेरी नजर में. This is what I feel for a startup. So let's understand the story of startups in India. If you go back, I think as a startup, the story started with software services when in 1968 TCS was launched. That was the first wave of startups. If you talk about at a scale, TCS today is where we all know. So that was the first step. The second was when the investment started happening in India itself. पहले क्या होता था कि investments के लिए you have to go to US or UK to raise capital either from PE or from VC capital. So that had started happening in India, and that started happening in India in 2007-8 when Swiggy's and Snapdeals and Flipkarts, those startups started coming in, and that's where the startup ecosystem moved. And that the game changer was 2002 2003. अगर आप देखो जब global meltdown हुआ था and many people started coming back to India, and that's where people started coming back to India. They were working with Amazon, with Google, with Oracle, and they came back and they started. That's what many of the startup founders did. So ये थोड़ा सा एक background है. Major milestones क्या है startup ecosystem में over the last 25 years. So if you see, as I was saying, 1968 to 1981, it was more of outsourcing, IT, TCS, Infosys. But those companies actually got real and became very big because of not only because they were startups, but also because there were a lot of motivation and incentive which was given by the government in by way of tax benefits, by way of other incentives. So that was 1968 to 1981. And then late 90 Naukri.com or InfoEdge, the legal name, became the first internet company to list on the Bombay Stock Exchange. So Naukri.com became the first .com company to list on the Bombay Stock Exchange. Then जो लास्ट के आई वुड से 12-13 साल में जो हुआ है, फ्लिपकार्ट आया, was saying 2008 flip. In fact, I am part of the very much startup ecosystem. I'm lucky to be. I was in Bangalore in 2006, 7, 8 when the Flipkarts started coming up and Snapdeal came in and other startups came in, the IT startups and tech startups, and large VC firms like Excel funds, and those funds started investing largely. And then the ecosystem started building up. Startup ecosystem क्या होता है? I think we will discuss that. We will discuss that later. Make My Trip, we all know Make My Trip. Make My Trip was the first Indian company to list in Nasdaq at that point of time as a startup. And 2010 से क्या हुआ कि products started coming in. I know you would be knowing Freshdesk, Practo, InMobi. Those startups started coming up. World's largest VC firm, I think if not the largest, one of the private VC firm, otherwise the sovereign funds बहुत हैं. Tiger Global came and started investing heavily in 2011-12, 20 million, 20 million, 30 million in one go. But 2016 tak, the challenge with Indian startup ecosystem was that people were banking very much on the thought process that the behavior of Indian consumers will go online. People will start ordering food online. People will start ordering dresses online. People will start ordering everything online, from glasses, from specs, everything from what. But that didn't happen. So there was a lag from 2012-13 to 2016, and people started talking about कि Flipkart या Amazon जो है वो खाली big शहर, बड़े शहर में they can do, because smaller towns you don't have the data penetration, don't have the right data. So that, I think, disruption, that's the reason I say that India's largest startup is Jio. That disruption was brought in by Jio in 2016 when you had the best data penetration. Even today, you talk about in India, India has got the best data penetration at the lowest cost worldwide. So when that happened from 2016-17, you start seeing that even in people from tier 2, tier 3 cities started converting and moving from offline to online on their behavior. So I think that was the landmark 2016. 2000, 2018, I think most of us, many of us are chartered accountants, and we know that when Walmart acquired Flipkart for $16 billion, what had happened at that point of time. I will discuss that later because that is one of the success stories of Indian startup ecosystem. 2020 pandemic में हम सबके पास कुछ काम नहीं है, we were just talking about, but actually Reliance raised $20.2 billion. And I don't want to talk about stock market, but you can see the price of Reliance today and the kind of value it will unlock. 35% of entire funding of Indian startups ecosystem in last 5 years एक बार में Jio ने raise किया. And for the first time, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, all these three companies invested in a single company. I mean ऐसा कभी नहीं हुआ है कि Google, Facebook और Microsoft ने एक ही कंपनी में एक साथ इन्वेस्ट किया है. So that talks about a lot about the potential of Indian startup ecosystem. Uh, we we will move forward. So Geo, what has Geo done? I mean, and I want to talk more about Geo because Geo has actually changed. We all don't realize this, but now if in when our domestic help every evening, my domestic help has a video call in to her village every day. I mean that kind of a disruption which Geo has brought in terms of video consumption, in terms of data consumption, we are highest today. So uh, I think Geo has, and today Geo has 52% of India's internet user base, and Geo is now getting into Geo Mart. Geo is converting the local Kirana shops and onboarding them on their app. Geo is, as I was said, Geo has raised that kind of money in last 5 months when everyone was worrying. I still remember in first week of April when everyone was worried about pandemic and pandemic mein businesses khatam ho jayenge, ye ho jayega, wo ho jayega. You suddenly see a pop-up news that Facebook has invested this much of billion in Geo. I think uh, uh, I think I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was close to 4-5 billion has invested. So that kind of impact which Geo has brought in. Uh, so I was talking about the ecosystem. लोग बोलते हैं कि startup ecosystem होता क्या है? What is the ecosystem? And for an ecosystem to thrive and grow, there are four things which is required. One is the startup, the idea, the entrepreneur, business. The second is the supporting organizations जो आज के दिन में mentors हैं. So PCN can be an incubator, accelerator, mentor kind of thing. We can talk about that later. Research and knowledge institutes, many of the knowledge institute, IITs, IIMs, सबके पास आज के दिन में e-cell है, entrepreneur cell है, जहाँ पे they nurture from second year, third year to become the student entrepreneur, and the funding organization, people who invest. So there are four pillars on which startups or the startup ecosystem actually stays. One is the startup, supporting organizations, institutes, and funding organizations. We have not included government in this because there is a saying that uh, for the it is best for the government to be out of the business. And अभी तक गवर्नमेंट ने बहुत कुछ प्रॉमिस किया, but we will see what government is able to deliver in terms of startup. What government has able to do, this government at least has helped her to brought startup word on the mainframe of things. So what has happened in last 10 years in the startup ecosystem? If you talk about, so there are today for 400 plus active institutional investors. So in India, you have 400. So दुनिया के जितने top VC firms हैं, any VC firm, either they have direct offices in India or they have indirect through LISO office or something. Not very long, but up to 2007, 8, 2010, you hardly had any investors or VC firms in India. किसी को अगर fund raise करना है, तो they had to travel to US or UK or to other parts or to China to raise capital. But today, VC firms are actually going to the investors, and today there is no dearth of investment in India. That's a great sign for Indian ecosystem, and that's the reason why we have that much of funding which is there in the startup ecosystem. So 32 unicorns as of now. Unicorn का मतलब होता है ऐसा कोई startup जिसका valuation is more than 1 billion USD. 1 billion USD आज के रेट में हो सकता है 7,300 करोड़ के आसपास. कोई भी स्टार्टअप जिसका जो प्राइवेटली हेल्ड है, जो लिस्टेड नहीं है, और उसका वैल्यूएशन अगर 7,003 करोड़ से ज्यादा है, तो दैट इज कॉल्ड यूनिकॉर्न. ये ग्लोबल डेफिनेशन है. तो इन इंडिया वी हैव 32 यूनिकॉर्न एज वी स्पीक. 32 यूनिकॉर्न का टोटल वैल्यूएशन एज ऑफ टुडे इज मोर देन 110 बिलियन. दैट इज मोर देन 7,30,000 करोड़. इससे ज्यादा वैल्यूएशन सिर्फ 3 लिस्टेड कंपनीज का है इंडिया में. सो यू वी कैन थिंक अबाउट व्हाट काइंड ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट व्हिच हैज कम इन द स्टार्टअप इकोसिस्टम. 7,30,000 करोड़ का वैल्यूएशन है फॉर टॉप 32 स्टार्टअप्स इन इंडिया एज ऑफ टुडे. So this is what it is. If we move forward, these are the 32 unicorns. आपने बहुत लोगों ने इनका नाम सुना होगा. Razorpay, Unacademy recently became unicorn. It's into edutech, and I think because of the pandemic, it has really helped them to become unicorn. Nykaa is a fashion company. Postman, SAS है. Pine Labs is the payment. You see that the post जिसमें Pine App लिखा रहता है, हम लोग बहुत देखते थे, जिसमें क्रेडिट कार्ड घुसा के we make payments. Ola Electric, we all know. Dhruva, it's a great company. So ये सब यूनिकॉर्न है आज के दिन में. उड़ान is a very unique company which is actually converting your local kirana shop into a e-commerce businesses. So these are the businesses. I think in my case, out of 32, at least I use 20 directly or indirectly. Baiju became unicorn very recently. First company wherein Facebook had invested directly 2 years back. So these are the top 32 unicorns which are there in India at this point of time. So India is the third largest startup ecosystem as of today. जो recognized startups are, वैसे in my mind there are more than 1 million startups, but they are not recognized. Smaller cities में अभी तक मीडिया पहुंच नहीं पाई है, और they have not been registered themselves on as a startup with government. But total number of recognized startups stands more than 50,000. CAGR is 17 to 18%. And ये data पुराना है 26. Now it's 32 unicorn because 6 unicorn became in 2020. Pandemic में जब हम सब बोल रहे हैं कि हमारे पास काम नहीं है, हमारे देश में 6 ऐसे स्टार्टअप्स हैं जिनकी वैल्यूएशन 7,300 करोड़ से ज्यादा हो गई इस पैंडेमिक में. It's very much related to government in terms of what government is doing. The government started talking about startups from 2016. Prior to 2016, government had never bothered about startup. आज भी changes आ रहा है because bureaucracy level पे अभी भी बहुत challenges है. अभी भी बहुत red ribbon है. But the point is that the things are changing. Government is accepting that startup is the only way where Indian economy can go to the next level. There is a very interesting comparison between India and China, which I will speak later, and why I feel that startup can be the only way wherein Indian economy can actually compete with China. So ये कुछ benefits हैं जो कि startups को मिलते हैं by government. We can discuss this in detail if it's required later, but financial benefits है, tax benefits है. But there are still many challenges. For example, एक हमारा जो provision था 56(7) वाला प्रीमियम वाला, उसके कारण स्टार्टअप्स को बहुत प्रॉब्लम हो गया था, बिकॉज स्टार्टअप आइडिया लेवल पे स्टार्टअप यूज्ड टू गेट फंडिंग इन इंडिया, और कैपिटल गेन लग जाता था या टैक्सेशन लगा देते थे असेसिंग ऑफिसर, और असेसिंग ऑफिसर को पता ही नहीं चलता था कि ये हो क्या रहा है. आई मीन हाउ कैन अ स्टार्टअप व्हिच डजंट हैव रेवेन्यू, व्हिच हैज जस्ट स्टार्टेड 3 months पुरानी कंपनी, एंड दैट स्टार्टअप इज वैल्यूड एट 5 CR. सो वहां पे बहुत एडिशंस हुए हैं, एंड globally startups, that provision was renamed as startup angel tax. Angel tax सब लोग बोलते थे what is angel tax. So now government has given lot of exemptions to startups. So if they are registered with government, so there is a way of registering, so they are exempted from angel tax. The reason why Pranab Mukherjee brought in that angel tax in 2011-12, if I'm correct, was very different to control the black money and the kacha part thing. But उससे ज्यादा impact, negative impact startups पे आ गया. And I will give you one interesting reason. For instance, in Singapore, there is no concept of capital gain. since there is no concept of capital gain, there is no concept of share premium, because कोई भी शेयर किसी भी वैल्यू पे आप किसी को भी इशू कर सकते हैं, गवर्नमेंट को उससे फर्क नहीं पड़ता, because there is no capital gain as such. Because of that, even though Singapore is not making money on capital gain tax, but Singapore has become India world's #1 financial hub. In fact, at least Asia mein to #1 hai financial hub. So the government needs to think about capital gain, at least for startups. Should they exempt completely? My view is that they should exempt it, because anyway startups में बहुत ज़्यादा कुछ फर्क पड़ने वाला है नहीं, and because of these reasons most of the businesses was registering in Singapore or in Mauritius. बहुत लोगों को पता नहीं है कि Flipkart की mother entity was still sitting in Singapore, and India was just a subsidiary, and all the valuation and all the funding was there in Singapore, and वहाँ पे भी एक challenge चल रहा है. So let's talk about the state of Indian startup funding. So there are 3 stages mainly startups में क्या होता है, because so one is angel investors. Angel investors is at an idea stage. So the first is the idea stage. Idea stage पे क्या होता है, friends, fools and family invest, or maybe some angel investors, because larger investors or PE or public market, they don't believe in you. So till the time you do not have MVP, which is minimum viable product, till the time you don't have traction, till the time you don't have customers, till the time you don't have revenue, only friends, family and fools can invest you. So so many times angel investors and that stage is being talked together. So that's the first stage. Then after 2-3 years, the startup moves, when they get more traction and they get more revenue, they get more customers, then VC investment comes in. VCs typically, so angel investment India में भी from 200k USD से लेके up to 2 million 2.5 million तक invest होता है, and VC investment starts from 2.5-3 million से लेके, it can be anything, it can be 50 million 100. अभी recently Razorpay, one of our clients, they have raised 100 million in series D or E, I think. So 100 million they have raised. So ये 100 million USD. So ये angel investors, उसके बाद VC के बाद you get into either IPO or PE. So India Mart is a classic example. They raised VC fund and then they went into IPO, and they have given a great exit to all the investors. So वो हम discuss करेंगे. I think this I have already covered in terms of क्या होता है ये. Let me just see. So incubators, accelerators. Now we are lucky that most of the global incubators, accelerators are in India now. And NASSCOM 10,000 is a great example of an incubator wherein they give space, they give program, they give free credit of Google, Amazon, Facebook ads and Google ads. And they actually nurture. It's like so when we call about incubators, बच्चे को when a baby takes birth, we put them into incubate. We say incubate. Similarly, for a startup, we incubate into a incubator. So incubators are coming up in India now.
अरे बहुत लेट बता रहे हो तुम. हमारा टारगेट तो मंगलवार को ट्रांसफर सारा कर देंगे.
So that is one. We move ahead. So there's a new terminology now which is called Sunicorn. Unicorn के बाद Sunicorn. Now what is Sunicorn? Sunicorn is a startup which soon will become unicorn. So there are around 7 to 8 Sunicorn which will become unicorn by end of this year itself, thanks to pandemic, because there are a lot of interesting startup with low touch point, low physical presence. They are being mostly into productivity tools, edutech, into entertainment, into OTT platform, and those will become a unicorn. There is a report which suggests that India will have 100 unicorns by 2025. And in terms of cities, where are those unicorns will sit? As of today, Bangalore leads with 21 unicorns. Delhi is second. Delhi includes Gurgaon and Noida both, and Mumbai is third. In future, so 100 unicorns by 2020-25, and I think this is a very realistic target because of many reasons, and I will tell you why. Why I feel that India will cross more than 100 unicorns by 2025. Now the main discussion, which really, so I've given a synopsis of the Indian startup ecosystem, kaise hua, kya hua, what is the funding status, and where what's happening. Uh, but something happened in April, and I will tell you why this part is so important. Something happened in April wherein the government brought in restriction and changed the FDI policy. When the Ladakh stress was there, and which is still there, the government brought in restriction very smartly, wherein they said that any country which has got border with land border with India cannot directly invest into any company in India. So indirectly, they have brought in a restriction on China, because anyway, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, they were not investing in Indian startups. And I tell you why this has been brought in. If you see, Chinese tech investors have put in 4 billion into Indian startup, and there are various thought processes which suggest that Indian startup, mostly the tech startup, is becoming a technology colony for global investors, be it US investors, be it Chinese investors. And out of 32 unicorns, 17 unicorns pay China ka investors, and investors actually sit on their board. So to stop this and to ensure that the Indian startup ecosystem do not depend heavily on Chinese investment, the government has brought in this restriction. There is a backfire which is happening, wherein many startups are facing difficulty in the sense that they are not able to raise capital, or kahin commitment tha wo ho nahi paya. But this is a changing, and this is a, I would say, a milestone for Indian startup ecosystem. I will tell you why, and this will become the milestone for Indian startup ecosystem. So these are the companies wherein uh, China has invested, and most of in the investments, they sit on the board. They actually control that startup indirectly. And when I say China, most of the fund is from the Chinese government, the sovereign government. So अभी ये चीज मेरे लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है बताना, because most of us, even when I was born, even at till that point of time, India was actually on par with China. India was not very, I would say, it was not lagging behind. So in 1978, for the first time, the Chinese GDP overtook Indian GDP. For the first time, from 1947 to 1978, Indian GDP was more than Chinese GDP. And in 1978, for the first time, Chinese GDP overtook Indian GDP. Today, if you talk about, I will just give you a number which I have noted, just a second. So if you talk about today, what has happened and how things have changed, as I was saying that in 1987 and till 1987, the GDP for both the companies was both the countries were more or less same, 10% here and there, 5% here and there, but it was same. By the year 2019, the Chinese GDP was 5 times of Indian GDP. Now what has happened? क्या हुआ ऐसा 20 साल में कि चाइना का GDP 5 times हो गया? Now, here is the challenge and here is the problem. The challenge is that we opened our economy in 1991 only, and because of bureaucracy and because of how Indian system works, even we are not able to take benefit of that till now. So I think that difference which has been brought in, and I feel only startups and only new age technologies and entrepreneurs can change this disparity and bring in some sanity into this. 5 times of Indian GDP when the population is same is not correct. In fact, today, if you talk about a very interesting thing which I'm saying, in 2020, China is still growing by 5%, and the world economy will shrink by 15%. For the first time in the history, there is a difference of 20% in the growth rate between rest of the world and China due to pandemic. Just a thought for you all. So what's the startup ecosystem, how things are there in China? Let me talk about. In China, there are 206 unicorns. In India, there are 32 unicorns. In China, there are 206 unicorns. China is world's largest startup ecosystem. You talk about all the companies, you talk about TikTok, you talk about all the companies, most of the companies are Chinese. all the mobile companies, Redmi, iPhone, sorry, not iPhone, OnePlus, all the phones you talk about, they are Chinese made. In fact, iPhone is also Chinese made. Dell laptop, which I'm using now, is Chinese made. Even the company is, it's a US company, but everything is outsourced to China. So China did something wherein the world opened their factory in China, and it was very smartly which they played in 1980s and 90s, and India was still sleeping. That's the reason we are, India has been called elephant, and we are still sleeping from that perspective. uh, as I said that China has 7 times more unicorn than India, but India is catching up fast. In last 10 years, has really catched up in terms of startups and in terms of investments. So that's a comparison between China and India, and I thought that it's very important that we talk about the comparison between China and India. Then we will only understand in terms of where we are today and what we need to do uh, as a country. I think this clearly explains that in terms of incubators and facilities and ecosystem where China is today compared to India, and this is very interesting. So if you talk about ByteDance, so ByteDance is the owner of TikTok. TikTok, we all know, got banned in 2016. Sorry, not 2016, but in June 2020. And after TikTok got banned, there are 5-7 social media apps which has come in India. uh, TikTok is valued at $75 billion. That is 5.6 lakh crore. टिकटॉक से ज्यादा वैल्यूड कंपनी इंडियन स्टार्टअप इकोसिस्टम में, इकोसिस्टम तो भूल ही जाते हैं, स्टॉक मार्केट में सिर्फ 3 कंपनी है जो टिकटॉक से ज्यादा वैल्यूड है. और इसके अलावा जितनी कंपनीज है, एंड एक रिलायंस, एक टीसीएस है, and there is one more company that is not coming to my mind, maybe SDFC, I don't know. So that's the disparity we are talking about. That's the difference we are talking about, and China has created this difference in last 25 years. And China has what China do. So if many of us, would have traveled in China. In China, you don't have Facebook, you don't have Google. So they have really preserved, and they secure their startups, and they ensure that their population use their startups and not the global startups. And they have done very well from that perspective. So this is the comparison in terms of startup valuation in India. If you talk about the top 3 startup, Baiju and Oyo and all those things, so that is around 2.7 lakhs crore. So again, in terms of investments, this is very it has to be that kind of disparity wherein China actually raised that kind of money, and there's huge difference in terms of how much China raised and how much India has raised, Indian startups have raised. But still, if you see the amount of money Indian startup have raised is way ahead. And in the last 10 years, from 2000, I would say not only 10 years, but after 2012-13, and especially from 2016, when the data penetration has started happening, when the internet connectivity and data consumption has become uniform from villages to large towns, Indian startup ecosystem, tech startups, and today, just a thought that all the businesses are tech businesses, and I really believe this. In today's world, if your business is not technology oriented, if it's not IT enabled, if it doesn't include technology, then it's very difficult for you to survive, because the rate of change for businesses or disruption is now 6 to 8 months. People are actually closing their offices in 6 to 8 months. That kind of speed has come up. So ये है in terms of investments. So Abhi, this is the thing which I want to really focus on in terms of can our startups become Atmanirbhar, at least at the initial stage. और वहाँ पे it's very important that, and why it is so important for Indians to put in money in Indian startups. एक बहुत interesting thought process, and that this is correct also. Even we feel that when we help our startup to raise capital, it's easier for Indian startups and tech startups to convince a foreign investor than an Indian investors. And that has to change. When Indian money will be pumped into Indian startups, the ownership of Indian startups will remain in India. the data, the privacy, and all those things will remain in India. That is what we need to do as a country, which has started happening in China 20 years back. So, and when there are challenges, global challenges. So last challenge was 2008-9, and because of that challenges, Uber and Airbnb came up, and other startups came in. Now, in next 12 to 18 months, we will see many interesting startups who would come up. EduTech has already become a big business. You talk about Vedantu, you talk about Baiju, you talk about Topper, you talk about many such EduTech. There are productivity apps. Zoom, if you talk about Zoom as a platform, we never knew about Zoom 6 months, 8 months back. 80% of the revenue of Zoom has come in last 6 to 8 months. If you talk about the overall thing, so this pandemic will bring in change, and we all, if we are interested, and if we feel that we need to see startups. I think investing in startup is the best way to create wealth in this point of time. You don't get interest rate on FDs, stock market, you can't trust, mutual funds you can't trust, real estate we all know. Then what is left? The only thing which is left which can create wealth is startups in India. And I think as an Indian, we all should think, look this as a very important investment asset, to my mind. So that talks about, as of now, Indian companies or Indian investors. There are hardly any Indian in terms of money which is from India, other than Mahindra Group or Hero Group. Reliance Geo or Reliance GNext has started investing in a lot of startups now. But Mohandas Pai is a mentor to me. He's doing a lot of good stuff in terms of investing in startups. And but as I said, this message needs to go to every city and town that take out some money and see if you can invest in a startup. In terms of regulation and what Indian government can do, first, I firmly believe that there should not be any capital gain on startup, at least up to a point, so that the small investors should not worry about capital gain and the tax angle. Uh, Still, we need to do a lot, even though in the ease of doing business ranking, we have come up from 142nd position to less than 50 now. We are amongst the top 50 countries on this planet in terms of ease of doing business. But New Zealand, Singapore, New Zealand is number one, Singapore is number two in terms of ease of doing business. And there are many reasons for that. The government is doing a lot of good things. For instance, now when you set up a company, your PF, ESI, your SOPS establishment number, your PAN number, your TAN number, everything gets allotted. So the time gap earlier, when I in 5 years back, to start a company, it would take 1.5 to 2 months. Now in 15 days, actually in India, you can register a company. In Singapore, still you can register a company in 2 hours. So I think those things are still, India is improving, but we need to attract more investment, because we have 130 crore people. That the signs of market which we have, and because we are a democratic country, and that's the advantage we have over China. People will still get attracted to India, and people will still invest. But if we improve on those things, we can actually climb the ladder in next 10 years. The largest, so we talk about that when a startup ecosystem becomes mature. The typical sign of a startup ecosystem to become mature is then when investors start getting exits, when investors are able to sell shares to other investors. It's very difficult for a startup which is not listed that the other investors will come in. And mind you, 50% of the startups die, 20-25% of startups just somehow survive, and only maybe 5% or 3% of startup become big. Maybe 0.10, 0.15% of startup actually becomes unicorn, less than that. So the biggest exit which has happened in India is when Walmart bought Flipkart. But it's a different story that 16 billion is a rounding figure for Walmart. It's less than 3% of their annual revenue. So that kind of cash which Walmart has, so that's the biggest thing. But the other exits also, India Mart is also a very interesting story, where India Mart actually went public and dear friend Dinesh Agarwal, they have done massive, and today the valuation of India Mart is close to 15,000 crores, and it's listed on the Bombay Stock Exchange, NSE, BSE both, and they've given excellent exit to their earlier investors. So when startups start getting listed on Indian stock exchanges, that day you will feel that the 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 ecosystem is maturing and we are going to the next level. So these are the startups which have given excellent exit in 2019. Oyo through buyback, Yatra, Policy Bazaar, Delivery, Sopclues, India Mart, as I said, they went public, but only one IPO in all these. We want to have at least 30 to 40% of exits through IPO, and that's where the game will change. Uh, I don't know. We talk about that through the policy statement, but government might want to bring in some changes. They are bringing some changes wherein the risk for startups to go to public is that most of the startups, because they work on a disruptive idea, and when you talk about disruptive idea, when you are trying to change the habit of a customer, जब आप किसी की आदत बदलने की कोशिश कर रहे हो, you need tons and tons of money, because you need to pump in money through ads and everything. You need to have the best resource and everything, so you will not be profitable for a long period of time. Or and the challenge is that those loss making companies can't just directly go on a stock exchange and list, because retail investors don't know that this company is not profitable, and that's a risk. So maybe the Indian government is now working on a separate stock exchange for startup, which is very similar to what is there in US, wherein the investors, they know that I'm taking a risk, and you need to cross a limit to be investor in on that platform. So I think that is coming up. When that gets formalized and becomes reality, you will see many startups going on listing, and people know that I'm taking a risk. I know that the startup is still not profitable, the startup is still very much risky, but I want to invest because I see that in 5 years the startup can become big. uh, so as I was saying, startup as an asset, and why we should start thinking about startup as an asset seriously, uh, and maybe pull out some money. And it's not that you need to put in a lot of money. Angel investment starts from 5 lakh rupees to anything. So if even a 5 lakh rupees investment can be done, and you can actually own a equity in a startup. So that is not something huge, but that can be done. Indian startup, because as I said, by 2025 we are saying 100 unicorns at least, because now we see lot of domestic participation. 50 लाख 1 करोड़ रुपया कोई बड़ी चीज नहीं होती है, 10 लोग मिलके एक स्टार्टअप में इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं. फ्रॉम डे वन they know that my capital is at risk, this money might not come back, but there can be 40x or 100x return if the startup becomes big. So as I promised that I will share some success stories, and so Paytm, Vijay Sekhar Sharma, very good friend, they everyone knows Paytm, and Paytm is valued at 16 billion now, 16 billion USD. 16 billion is 16 into it's close to 20, I think 12 13,000 crores now. Make My Trip 23.5 billion. It got listed in Nasdaq first. And for a startup to become successful, there are 4 things. One is business model, the entrepreneur, the team, the timing. टाइमिंग कितनी जरूरी है एक स्टार्टअप के लिए. पेंडेमिक में बहुत एडुटेक या एडुकेशन बेस्ड स्टार्टअप्स आए. 2 साल पहले 3 साल पहले वो सब चलते नहीं, बिकॉज नो वन वुड इवन वुड हैव थॉट दैट children's or people can actually learn online. YouTube came much earlier. It didn't work well because people never thought that they will watch videos. Make My Trip launched in 90s, and Deep Kalra was struggling at that point of time, so they then got listed in Nasdaq, because ऑनलाइन ऐप पे या वेबसाइट पे टिकट्स बुक करना, ट्रिप बुक करना was not the behavior. So all these startups, if you see all these startups, they have changed the behavior pattern. And for eternal Paytm, you talk about, everyone is accepting Paytm, even though there are many more payment companies which have come in. Make My Trip, we all would have Make My Trip app on our phone. Flipkart, we all would have. I wanted to put Amazon because I personally feel Amazon is better. No uh, uh, hard feelings, but Flipkart is also. Baiju is a great name. I mean, Baiju was a small online classroom startup just 4 years back, uh, and today Baiju is a unicorn, first company wherein Facebook had directly invested in India. Swiggy, we all have Swiggy. I was today checking that Swiggy is even available in Dhanbad because I'm traveling to Dhanbad, and I was worried that can I use Swiggy there. So Swiggy is there in many and in most of the cities now. And in 2000, I think 12 or 13, 12, 13, we actually incorporated Swiggy. So Swiggy is a great example. Swiggy pandemic mein has become a lifesaver. Ola, we all know Ola. This gentleman, and I will end my session with this example, and why I say that uh, startup investment is a great asset. This gentleman, Ashish Gupta, was the first angel investor in Flipkart. He invested 10 lakh rupees in 2009, and he will exit some. I know some equity still he has in Flipkart, but 20 million. 10 lakh became 20 million in 10 years. Tell me which legitimate legal investment will give you that kind of return. So this is the power of startup, and this is the way India can change. Even US in the last 50 years became US the world's largest economy and superpower because of Google, Oracle, Microsoft, Apple, because of those companies. And if you see the Fortune 500 companies, all the top 25 companies, they're the new entrants. So I think with this I will end, and I think that I've done justice to this webinar, wherein I've tried to give a synopsis and an introduction to startup ecosystem in India, and I look forward to more interaction. And I will just stop sharing the screen just a second. Yeah. So I'm open to questions. I think Anurag, Pradeep Bhaiya, I'm open to questions, and this is an interesting and thanks for the opportunity, because I really wanted to discuss these things with our audience and with our brothers. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Alok Bhaiya, for sharing the mind-boggling numbers and details of the Indian startups and ecosystem. I will straight away invite Anurag Bhaiya to take forward the session. Anurag Bhaiya.
Hello everyone. Namaste. Sabhi bade bhaiya log ko. Hi all my younger brothers. Thank you Alok Bhaiya for such an insightful story and the background on Indian startup ecosystem. I think some of the details are like mind-boggling there and also very educative. I was taking notes also while you were speaking. So I would like for the larger audience here, I would like you to, can you explain startup a little bit in more detail, as in you explained that what is a startup, but then when most people look at any startup, they view it as through the lens of a traditional company, and they don't understand as in how startups should be treated, like rate, and how should, if you do a startup, with what minimal capital, how much lean resources you can start, and idea is to start experiment with something and fail fast. So can you elaborate a little bit on those aspects?
अनुराग, आपने एक साथ बहुत सा कुछ पूछ लिया, बट टू सिंप्लीफाई देखो स्टार्टअप क्या है. स्टार्टअप, so in a sense every business is a startup, but if you go strictly, because investors would need return, ठीक है. Investors, this startups में risk capital जाता है. Startup is not FD or a mutual fund. So एक म्यूट कर लेते हैं, कहाँ पे थोड़ा सा वो आ रहा है. तो स्टार्टअप पे any idea which can change the behavior of customers lifetime के लिए, and it can disrupt at scale भी बहुत जरूरी है. Scale and behavior change करना, disruption लाना, वो एक startup है मेरे thought में, and that's where the risk capital comes in. Other than that, we can call it lifestyle business. किसी का कोई ट्रेडिंग बिजनेस है, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग बिजनेस है, फर्म है, बुटीक है, ट्रेडिंग है, those are lifestyle business because those will not give you scale. those those will not give you, I would say, non-linear growth. वो चीज नहीं हो सकता है. सो स्टार्टअप्स जहां पर डिस्ट्रप्शन हो और स्केल पे डिस्ट्रप्शन हो. बाइजू में एक बार वेबसाइट बन गया, एक बार ऐप बन गया, एंड देन यू गो आउट मार्केटिंग. व्हाइट हेड्स आर अभी बहुत जगह डिस्कशन चल रहा है. 2 महीने 3 महीने के बच्चे, मजाक चल रहा है कि आप कोडिंग सिखा रहे हो 4 साल के बच्चे को. आई मीन दिस इज ओवर द सोशल मीडिया एंड एवरीवन टॉकिंग अबाउट दैट, which is acquired by Baiju. So एक कंपनी, प्रदीप भैया, 2 साल पुरानी कंपनी व्हाइट हेड्स आर, वो कंपनी 2400 करोड़ में अभी बाइजू ने खरीदी है. 2 साल पुरानी कंपनी.
व्हाट्सएप पे बहुत सारा आ रहा है उसके बारे में कि वो कोडिंग वोडिंग सिखाती है, उसी का बता रहे हैं ना.
हाँ, वो एक इंटरेस्टिंग है. उस पर थोड़ा सा भी कुछ नेगेटिव गोरिल्ला मार्केटिंग किया है उन्होंने. उसमें क्या है कि दे आर बोम्बार्डिंग विथ मार्केटिंग कि 13 साल का बच्चा गूगल में 2 करोड़ की जॉब कर रहा है. बट वो बातें छोड़ के, बट द रियलिटी ऑफ द लाइफ इज दैट स्टार्टअप इज समथिंग विच कैन डिस्टरप्ट at scale or jaldi se. So that can only happen when you use technology. And now India is at a right place in terms of technology because of data penetration, which was not there 4 years back. और क्या चीज पे सोचना चाहिए. सो 3-4 चीजें बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट अनुराग एक स्टार्टअप के लिए. एक तो टीम, क्योंकि बिजनेस मॉडल चेंज हो सकता है, बट एंटरप्रेन्योर का विलिंगनेस और गट्स और द पावर टू डू समथिंग, वो चेंज नहीं हो सकता. तो टीम बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. अगर कोई भी स्टार्टअप में इन्वेस्ट करता है या कोई ज्वाइन करता है, तो टीम कैसी है. सेकंड, बिजनेस मॉडल क्या है, बिकॉज अल्टीमेटली प्रॉफिटेबल तो होना पड़ेगा. यू कांट बी जस्ट बर्निंग मनी. एंड थर्ड चीज विच इज वेरी क्रिटिकल इज टाइमिंग. टाइमिंग इज सो इंपॉर्टेंट बिकॉज देर आर मेनी बिजनेस मॉडल जिसकी टाइम सही नहीं होती है, बिकॉज ऑफ दैट स्टार्टअप फेल. अगर कोई, जैसे मैंने एग्जांपल दिया, जूम का एग्जांपल है. जूम अगर 30 साल पहले लॉन्च होता तो क्या जूम चलता? नहीं चलता. सो वो टाइमिंग, टीम एंड बिजनेस मॉडल, 3 चीज बहुत जरूरी है.
यस, एक भैया आपने ये यू टच्ड अपॉन टेक्नोलॉजी. नाउ हियर आवर ऑडियंस इज मोस्टली फ्रॉम फाइनेंस बैकग्राउंड, so I want you to give some guidance on, like, let's say if someone who is not from a technology background wants to do a startup, and I think this can be like a real confusion in his mind, that how can I do a startup because I don't know technology and I don't have a technical background. So what is the way forward for such people to go and do a startup? Should they outsource the whole product? Should they hire and team up with someone? What is the best way to go forward?
Anurag, so it depends from sector to sector, but the reality is that as a founder or as a leader, you need to know the basics at least. जिससे क्या है कि people will, when you talk to people and when you hire people or outsource, you are able to understand what you are paying for. So बहुत जरूरी है कि आप basic technology समझ लो, क्या प्लेटफॉर्म है नहीं है, उतनी समझ लो. If you feel that your technology you will be high on technology, hire a co-founder or bring a co-founder which will be from technology. So founding team में someone from technology and someone from finance is must. Technology, because any business, any startup which will be there today in 2020 will be technology heavy. Finance, because you will raise capital, there are a lot of legal agreements which you will sign, there are a lot of things which you will do. At times the legal laws are not very simple. Still, if you have third party legal firm or outsourcing companies to develop, because you don't want to hire too many people internally, but you need to have co-founding team which will have someone from finance and someone from tech. That's must.
Yes. So if I understood correctly, yeah, so I think product knowledge, what you're saying, is the most important, and then you can build the technology on top of it. The idea of the product is more important, and then how you build and scale it.
Yeah.
So, but my follow-up question would be, yeah, like, so let's say me and my friend have a great idea and we're not able to find someone technical. Is it right to outsource the product building at an initial stage to an IT firm or an outsourcing firm, and then later on find someone who can take over and be the CTO in the company?
Yeah, so I will give you a better idea, a better way. Find someone who can join in as an advisor, who can be an advising CTO. He might be working somewhere, he might be doing, and hire someone not from. So इंडिया में अभी ML और AI बहुत critical है. ML is machine learning, AI is artificial intelligence or assisted intelligence. So you hire someone not as a full time but on a sweat equity, and you bring in someone from Singapore or from Israel because वहां से बहुत वो, and you do that, and then maybe outsource it. पूरा का पूरा थर्ड पार्टी पे मत डिपेंड रहो. And after a point, when your startup raise capital, maybe you want to convert that advising role into full time employment.
Yes. अच्छा, और भैया एक चीज, जैसे कि अगर किसी को स्टार्टअप स्टार्ट करना हो तो आई थिंक बिफोर गोइंग टू मच डिटेल, what is the basic procedure, like anyone who wants to do a startup, what sort of an entity he should go for, limited liability or private limited, ये सब जो structures है, and from the tax points consideration point of view, later on he can attract funding, let's say from outside India also, then they look for tax haven entities. So what is the best option available right now in India for any of these entrepreneurs?
See, India में private limited company एक option है जहाँ से you can raise capital because of the structure, because you have to issue equity. Most of the startups were setting up the holding company either in US or in Singapore. Reason being that most of the investors were not very comfortable in investing a company in India directly because of the IP, because they were not very happy with in terms of IP laws are being put, and also the FEMA and RBI laws, which are very stringent, and they were very apprehensive of the fact that they might not be able to take money back. So this was happening, but now I see a change wherein investors want to invest directly also the Indian company, but still Singapore and US, they are number one in terms of, you rightly said, in terms of holding company, not only tax haven. So investors want transparency. Investor wants that whatever the rule is, the day they invest, the rule remains the same. It should not be that जब हम exit कर रहे हैं तब we have to pay taxes.
Yes, the change of government and the regulatory changes.
So retrospective आप amend कर दो और हज को प्रॉब्लम हो या फ्लिपकार्ट को प्रॉब्लम हो, वॉलमार्ट को, वो नहीं होना चाहिए. So because of those reasons, they were forcing startups ki you should set up a company in Singapore or in US, but now that is slowly changing with India's ease of doing business improving.
Okay. और भैया जैसे कि है ना, अब यहाँ पे बहुत सारे लोग हैं जिन लोगों को माइंड में आइडिया रहती है, दे हैव फ्यू थिंग्स इन देयर माइंड, बट देयर इज दिस कंफ्यूजन और हेजिटेशन to take that leap forward and go do a startup. What would you advise those people? And follow up on this is that how should you come up with an idea for a startup? This is people who wants to go into this route of entrepreneurship and doing a business on their own.
See, so everyone would be different in the sense that सबकी story अलग होगी, from risk appetite, from background. But जो एक golden rule है वो ये है कि when you start early and fail early, as you said, because once you have responsibilities, once you are married and you have kids, it's very difficult for you to start. Reason being that for first 3 years, you should not even think of making some money from that startup, not even salary. And 5 out or 6 out of 10 startups fail. They die down, they shut their shop. And so it's very important that you build that flexibility. You should have at least 2 to 3 years of your expenses which is there with you, so that because of you, your lifestyle of your family doesn't change. I mean, entrepreneurs are crazy, they can sleep on floor, but because of them, the lifestyle of their family doesn't change. So that is one part. The second part is in terms of what they want to do, problem. So they should do a lot of research and understand ki kya hone wala ecosystem. And the best way to do that is work in a startup for 3 years. Work in a startup for 3 years and work closely with the CEO or founder, because then you will understand the challenges, and then you will understand कि जब chaos रहता है, जैसे when I was in EY, everything is structured. So हमें पता इस बंदे के पास इस चीज के लिए जाना है, इस बंदे के पास इस चीज के लिए जाना है, यहाँ से इनवॉइस रेज होता है, everything is structured. When you have your own startup, everything is chaos है. You don't know कि in the evening what you will work on. A mail will come and CEO will say, भाई आज ये खत्म करना है. You don't know. You are about to leave office at 8 p.m. and you say your CEO will say that there is an investor call. So सबसे अगर बेस्ट तरीका वो है, अगर किसी को स्टार्टअप करना है तो 2 से 3 साल किसी अच्छे स्टार्टअप में यू वर्क, डोंट थिंक अबाउट सैलरी, डोंट थिंक अबाउट, द ओनली थिंक अबाउट इज एक्सपोजर। वो जब आप कर लेते हो, यू अंडरस्टैंड द लाइफ, बिकॉज पीपल बहुत जल्दी हार मान जाते हैं। 1 साल दे ट्राई एंड दे लीव एंड अगेन दे जॉइन सम जॉब। दैट विल स्टॉप यू, दैट विल कीप यू grounded, and that will keep you in the startup, and you will continue to, because it's a long game, it's a long journey, it's not it। नभी हम लोग बाइजू का बात करते हैं, मेक माई ट्रिप का बात करते हैं, विजय शेखर शर्मा का बात करते हैं, बट everyone has got around 2 decades of hard work and passion and sweat and blood. That's the reason they are there. You talk about Sanjeev Bikhchandani, you talk about any uh, successful startup or entrepreneur who is there today. So वो mindset सबसे जरूरी है स्टार्टअप करने के लिए। अगर mindset जरूरी है कि यार कुछ भी हो जाए, मैं यहाँ से हिलने वाला नहीं हूँ, एंड आई विल इंश्योर कि 3 साल तक मैंने टाइम ले लिया, 3 साल में बहुत जरूरी है, 3 साल में मैं अगर कुछ नहीं होता है, देन आई विल गो बैक। And it is also important at what stage of your life. It's very difficult to start something from scratch at the age of 35-40. Very difficult. Ecosystem भी बहुत आसान है इंडिया में। इंडिया is the best time to do entrepreneurship because you have investors, you have the ecosystem, you have advisors, mentors. अभी आप LinkedIn पे जाते हो and you can talk to anyone. I mean, the kind of data information which our generation today we have, or the support we have because of social media, is mind-blowing. But how to use that? You should not waste that by watching Netflix. I mean, it all depends what you want to do. So वो बहुत जरूरी है। ये सब माइंडसेट क्लियर हो जाए, उसके बाद स्टार्टअप करो, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है। जब तक ये नहीं होना चाहिए कि यार मैं 3 साल में यूनिकॉर्न बन जाऊंगा। यू शुड बी देयर एंड यू शुड फील कि 10 साल मेरे को देना है।
Yes. So if I have to summarize, भैया, 2 important lessons इसमें ये है कि one is to start young and try it out, and second is to be able to take risk from a very early stage. As in, after let's say chartered accountancy, you might get a very good offer from a consultancy firm or a big four, but to be able to let go of that offer and to join a startup where आपको 20-30% कम का ऑफर मिल रहा हो, but the exposure you will get will be huge and immense, and the kind of environment, because in a startup you're working on finance, you're working on marketing, and you're working on product, everything, wherein in these organizations you will only work on one set of functions. So I think that is very important.
Exactly. होता क्या है ना कि I've seen in my life wherein people who have worked in large organization, any MNC, and if they start, they feel that this is not my job. For every job because they will start missing that structure, that structure कि यार इसमें तो एक मैनेजर होना चाहिए था, इसमें एडमिन होना चाहिए था। So when you work in a startup and then start, you know that what is the full form of CEO. In the startup lingo, we say chief of everything. So that mindset होगा अगर you join a startup for 2-3 years and then you start your own startup.
Okay. This brings us to the idea also. What you said, I think for the ideas, many people, many young cousins of mine, friends of mine, call me and ask me कि भैया की startup तो करने का मन है, but idea समझ में नहीं आ रहा है. So I think one is important thing is passion. If you have the passion, you will come up with the idea. And second, I tell most young people is to look around you and see what is the challenge. Like if you see all the big startups, Uber, Airbnb came out of problems that they faced. उबर वाला जो फाउंडर है वो बोल रहा था एक रात को ही वाज लुकिंग फॉर अ टैक्सी बिलो हिज ऑफिस एंड ही वाज नॉट एबल टू गेट अ टैक्सी. दैट्स व्हेन द आइडिया केम that let's use all the existing fleet of cars into a taxi. Airbnb also, when he went for that football was going on. I think so most important lesson for young people and anyone who wants to do a startup is to look around you and see where you are facing problems in your day-to-day life, and I think a very good idea, a big idea will come out of that.
You rightly said. So to sum up, don't search for ideas, search for problems.
Yeah, that's
और
the
प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व करने की कोशिश करो. इट कैन बी एनीथिंग एंड ट्राई टू डू समथिंग व्हिच इज रिलेटेड टू योर फील्ड. That helps, because then because as a founder you should be expert in at least one field. You can't be expert in technology. So a chartered accountant can't be expert in technology, can't be expert in marketing, but he can be expert in taxation, in communication. So वो बहुत जरूरी है.
Yes. Now, talking of ideas, Bhaiya, now, and since we are in the pandemic times, can you also talk about some of the new ideas which have come around in pandemic or where existing ideas have started doing really well during this time? What should one focus on?
So any idea which is low on touch point, in the sense that which is online, which can be scaled. You talk about productivity tools. You talk about online education. You talk about edutech. You talk about social media. All those things will become big. You talk about healthcare will also become very big. Healthcare is also becoming very big. So all those ideas will actually take it to the next level.
Yes. So any recent businesses that you have dealt with, or the companies that you might like to cite as an example, have started doing well during this pandemic in India?
So edutech, most of the edutech are doing very well. You talk about an academy, they become unicorn, the latest unicorn. You talk about Baiju, you talk about edutech sector is one, healthcare is one, agri-tech is one. There is lot of opportunity in edutech. Social media is one social media app with TikTok gone. Uh, there are many social media app like Chingari. Chingari became very big. In fact, Chingari is being promoted by government also. With ban on a Chinese app, there are a lot of opportunities for Indian app. There is no dearth of money. There's huge money available from Middle East, from US, from Europe, and from other parts. But so there are a lot of apps which used to dominate by Chinese companies. So there are a lot of opportunities there. Anything which is low on physical touch and high on online will become big. Productivity tools, those things will become very big.
Yes, I'm reading a book, and as personally as a VC investor, Bhaiya, I really like subscription based models. And now subscription does not only mean like a Dropbox or a Netflix or Amazon Prime subscription, but any kind of subscription. So I think what we will start seeing in going forward is that in any kind of services that we are using, we'll start seeing this subscription behavior. And I think that is what is one of the most important sector. And I think you would also see in your clientele list and many companies that subscription model is becoming big. Even in grocery, we can see like a subscription. I've listened to a restaurant company
You
wherein
know, yeah. You know, the biggest example of subscription which we have not even realized is that Microsoft Office. If you
yeah,
talk about Microsoft Office was totally pirated because prior to the earlier Microsoft management, they never thought that. So they used to think about कि एक साल में पूरा license लो, lifelong license लो, and people were very worried कि इतना पैसा हम क्यों invest करें when you get things pirated. Now the biggest example of a turnaround story for Satya Nadella has done great on that is subscription. They turned Microsoft into subscription model. You talk about Microsoft Teams, you talk about Microsoft Office, everything is subscription. You pay something a month. So that's a great example. बहुत लोगों ने ये notice नहीं किया होगा. Uh, Big Basket, I don't know how many people use Big Basket. So Big Basket had started something which is called BB Delhi. So everything can be delivered to you tomorrow morning by 7:30, and it's subscription from milk to everything. It can be daily subscription, alternate subscription, weekly subscription. And I love that service because we know most of the things, 80% of things we know that we would need. So that's a subscription model is working very well. There are a lot of subscription models. You talk about SaaS. SaaS is service as a product, as a service. So you have a product company, but they offer those as a service. For example, Zoom is one of the interesting things, which is a subscription model. So you rightly said that subscription will become big, and people do not. So people don't want to pay 50,000, but people are ready to pay 4,000. You talk about all the OTT platforms. You pay 1,000 rupees to Netflix, but if Netflix will ask you 12,000, you will not pay, and you are so busy that by the time next renewal will come, you will forget, and you pay another subscription. So I think subscription will become big. Anything which is low on physical touch, high on touch point in terms of online, tech enabled, healthcare, digital, productivity tools, any behavior. Just think about any behavior, current behavior which has changed in the pandemic.
yeah.
So all those things will become big.
So, Bhaiya, would you advise all of us here, is this a right time to start a startup or think of doing something on their own or take this journey of entrepreneurship?
This is the right time. I already told, and there are many reasons for that. One reason, in India, the kind of support today we have for entrepreneurship. 5 years back, 6 years back, any of the chartered accountants from Prodar, after doing CA, if you tell your father or mother that I want to do a startup, you will get a thrashing. People will say, "पागल हो गया, क्या कर रहा है ये? Startup करेगा." Go join EY, go join KPMG. Today, I think that acceptance is coming up wherein people know, okay, ठीक है, let him do startup. So that is a big change. So वो resistance come है from family and friends. So people accept that you can do startup because startup is into the mainstream. You talk about ET, you talk about all the media, startup is there. That's one positive. Second, you have got lot of investors which are ready. Third, you have the ecosystem, you have mentors, advisors. Fourth, which is so huge, that 2 years back, if you need to do startup in India, you have to travel to Mumbai or Bangalore or Delhi, Hyderabad. You can't do a startup from Indore, Bhopal, Raipur, Ahmedabad, Gujarat, Surat. You can't do. आज के दिन में, because of Geo, that's the reason I said that Geo has really brought in change. Because of Geo, because of data penetration, because of everything is online, and people have started accepting. Even I remember prior to pandemic, for just small meeting, just to close a deal, we need to travel to Mumbai in the morning and come back in the evening. Now we are closing everything on online. I hope that this habit retains and stays, because we save time, we save money. So I think this is the biggest change, wherein you will see startups coming up from small cities from India now. The way cricketers came in during IPL from small cities, now you will see entrepreneurs coming in from small cities, because you have everything online. If you need a mentor, you will get online. You need an advisor, you get online. Investors are there. Government support is there. The assessing officers at the ground level have started accepting what is startup. You have internet connectivity, data penetration everywhere, pan India. So you really don't need to move from Raipur, Bhilai, Bhopal to bigger cities to do a startup. So that's a great thing, and that's superb for a country like India.
So, as you mentioned, Bhaiya, everything is there. I think only thing which needs is passion. And I think everyone here would love to see more and more Podarians coming out and doing startups on their own. And I think there is this funding, as you said, and all the kind of services and support that he needs in today's time. So everything is there. Only thing what one needs is to have this passion and to be able to take this journey and plan properly going forward.
Yeah,
Bhaiya, I'd like to touch on one point.
yeah.
You mentioned in your presentation, you talked about the marquee startups in India, which got huge fundings in billions of dollars and became unicorns. But I think that is very necessary for ecosystem. But I think for a thriving ecosystem, and if you look at US and China, and even to an extent Europe, I think what is important is that there are companies which get exited at 50 million, $100 million valuation, and there are lots of them, which does not get spoken about so much. And when that kind of ecosystem is created, I think unicorns will keep happening, and that will take. It's good for PR and headlines, but I think the more important is the second level, second set of startups. Are we seeing a growth in that side in India right now, like with the kind of exit which Hawaii Junior had from Baiju?
So I tell you, so it's all process, it's all journey. Indian startup ecosystem, if you see, is only 15-year-old. It all started, the latest startup ecosystem, it all started post 2002, 2003, I think 2004. US startup ecosystem is at least 3 decade old. China also 2 decade old. So it takes time. If you see in the last 18 months, you have a lot of interesting exits. That is changing. Companies like India Mart going public, giving exit. Companies like uh, White Heads are other companies. So the maturity, the sign of a startup which is getting matured is when startups start giving good exit to investors, and then the investors again put that money back in the ecosystem. The way the Bansal brothers did, they are doing it now. So I think that is important. And you rightly said that the second layer, third layer, that is also happening now. Uh, Exits, mergers, acquisitions, everything is happening. And now we are going to the next level. The next 10 years will have lot of exits, lot of IPOs, lot of interesting consolidations, mergers that will happen. Flipkart is a great example. If I go to that slide wherein there are 20 interesting exits which happened in 2019-20, we'll realize that the Indian startup ecosystem is going to the next level and they're maturing. The most significant sign of a ecosystem that it's maturing is that when you start giving exits to investors. Otherwise तो कोई फायदा नहीं है.
Yes.
वो exits मिलने लगा है अब, and that is very interesting.
Yes, I think thus $100 million का exit is a better story for a startup than a one Walmart and Flipkart story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now since Bhaiya, we are talking about investing and exits, I think I want to touch upon angel investing from two perspectives. One is for anyone who starts a business, and as you mentioned rightly, that the best source of funding at an idea level is angel investing. So how should someone who's starting a business approach angel investing? How should he approach his friends, family, or whoever the angel investors are? What should be his pitch, and how should he approach? Another question which was asked here was that how much he should give up in that round when he raises the fund in angel investing.
See, as a founder or as a CEO, you have to be part of that ecosystem. So when you want to raise capital, so raising capital is a full-time job. So one of the co-founders need to spend full time in raising capital in a startup. So one of the things which you need to do is find out who are the angel investors or who are the micro VC investors who can invest in your ecosystem or in your startup, because most of the investors would have a choice. They want to invest. Someone want to invest in a consumer company, someone would want to invest in a fintech company, someone want to invest in a B2B enterprise company. So that choice is there. So you find out, do a filtering, find out 10-15 investors. Okay, these are the investors which may be interested in my startup. Approach them, talk to them, and talk to them, and be very honest and faithful in terms of what you are building from inside, rather than just trying to build up investment deck to raise capital. Don't do that. Bring your heart into the investment deck and say that this is what I want to build and this is the problem I solve. And it's a reiteration. So after 4 or 5 pitch with the investors, you will see that even your pitch and your business model is getting revamped because you have different thought process which are coming up. So एक तो वो है. Second जो चीज है वो ये है कि जब आप इन्वेस्टमेंट्स के लिए करते हो, क्या क्या स्टेक होना चाहिए. So angel investment typically should not be more than 15-18%, maximum 15%. There are two reasons for that. I've seen many business houses taking up 30, 35, 40% in a startup, putting a lot of money, and then that startup doesn't go anywhere. The reason being that you have to ensure that the next set of investors are still serious, are interested, and you leave at least 65-70% after Series A. So maybe 80-85% of equity should still stay with founders even after angel investment. Or as an angel investors, see, you can only suggest, you can give your opinion, but don't try to control. As an angel investor, you are just an investor. You do not. So एक चीज है, and I want to say this. This may not be correct, but many of the angel investors after investing becomes entrepreneurs in the sense that वो उनको लगता है वो उनकी company and they want to drive everything. Don't do that. It's the founders' company. It's their company. Let them run the company. 10-15% maximum. You should not dilute more than that because it's a long journey. If you really want to be successful, you need to raise at least till Series C, Series D, or Series A tak aate aate you should have at least 70-75% of equity with you.
Yes. And Bhaiya, since I think if any one of us in the audience here or from Podarium starts a business and maybe our family is not that exposed to angel investing, I think it is very important to explain if you are raising from close family or friends that this might fail and this money might go down the drain. So you should not do this as a one time.
Yes, it's a very risky thing. It's a risk capital. Someone want to invest in a startup, especially at the angel stage, because at the angel stage, your idea is still not MVP. MVP is minimum viable product. So minimum viable product वो होता है जिसमें आप एक स्टेज पे पहुंच गए जब आपको पता है कि ये प्रोडक्ट या ये सर्विस है जिसको यूज करने के लिए लोग पैसा दे सकते हैं. So वो स्टेज तक या उसके पहले एंजल इन्वेस्टिंग होता है. एक बार MVP तैयार हो जाता है, you have investors, you have traction, then the serious investors come in. So rule ये है कि angel investors, जो है वो स्टार्टअप को प्रिपेयर करते हैं लार्जर इन्वेस्टमेंट्स के लिए. So it's always good that you take investment from angel investors who are known in the ecosystem, who will help you to get connected to larger VCs, who will ensure that you raise next round of capital. Don't just raise capital from a family office or from a traditional business who doesn't know anything about startup ecosystem, because then you will not get help from that investor for the next round of funding.
Yes.
और ये बहुत बोलना बहुत क्लियर है कि 80% of the chances this money will go and drain. Startups may it will go and drain with that reality, with that perspective, because it's not a chit fund. It's something which is rare, risky, and this might fail. And if this fail, I will not be able to return that money to you. So we can funding में अपने आप में एक पूरा कोर्स हो सकता है. So you should not get into a debt. Till the time you do not have MVP, you do not have proper traction, debt पे मत जाओ. Depending on the nature of the business, talk about how much money you want to raise, from which kind of investor you want to raise. If you are building something which is disruptive, which will take lot of money, then go for larger VC firms, because they will have deep pockets. तो ये पूरा का पूरा एक्सरसाइज ये अपने आप में पूरा साइंस है, and one of the founder needs to take the leadership role in this.
I'm suggesting everyone who is thinking of a startup here should go to Alok Bhaiya as the first mentor for their startup. I think they'll greatly benefit from his expertise and his first-hand experience of dealing with Indian startups.